Welcome to Powerless to Powerful with Angela Bennett, a show that brings a sassy mix of transformative advice on health, relationships, love, career, and mindset shifting, together with some fun and laughter. Powerless to Powerful with Angela Bennett begins now. So what I want to know is, you were a medical doctor, and you walked away from that. And first of all, in your life, something must have happened to make you go, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. Now, it could have been that's your parents, or it could have been, you were trapped in a horrible accident and you didn't know what to do. And so you made a decision to go and be a doctor so you could never be in that position again. I don't know. And I'd love to talk about that, because we all have a life story that brought us to this point where it's like, oh my gosh, something has to change. And now you have this book and you did your life coaching. Like, that's not doctor-like.
Yes, it's a very unconventional path, I should say. And I think you're right. Something inspired the change. But to be honest, Angela, like I can't really put a finger on a event, like one thing that happened, but it sort of happened around the time when so we were married, me and my husband, we got married, and we had our first child within the first year and a half, and years later we were ready to try for our second child. Unfortunately, I lost that pregnancy. So this was in 2013, was my first experience with a pregnancy loss. My first child was about 2. So, we figured it was the right time to start growing the family. And we were in the Gold Coast for a year. Just, again, me and my husband were both medics at that time, and we were both training and, going into different areas of specialty. And that was my first experience with a miscarriage. And unfortunately, that was my next 5 years. So I lost 5 pregnancies in 5 years. And, I was still working as a medical practitioner. And so after our 1 year stay in the Gold Coast, we came back to Melbourne. And it was in that time that I really felt, as I was going through this very, I guess, hard, dark season of my journey of becoming a mom for the second time, I really felt God nudging me to share my grief. And at that point, I guess it just felt like a really hard thing to do. But after my 3rd pregnancy, which was a really, out of all my 5 pregnancies that I lost, my 3rd pregnancy loss was the most traumatic, because it was an ectopic pregnancy. And it was caught in the right, in the right time. It could have cost me a lot more damage to me physically as a woman, but thankfully my medical team, got there quick. And but it was a very traumatic experience for me, trying to get past that. And it was around that time that I really felt God calling me to share my work with others who might be going through this journey. And so this is going back to 2014, 2015. And, the internet was a very different place at that point. Blogging was a thing to do. And so I just quickly pretty much put together a website on WordPress and started sharing what seemed to be just simple sort of journaling or sharing of my journey and grief. Very quickly then became this place where women were coming to just support one another. And I had women reaching out to me, asking me if I can support them through their time of grief, which was, it took me by surprise, because I was, I guess trying to process my own grief in words, but obviously God had a different plan. So I was just pretty much blogging for about 2-3 years. And I started to attract this community of women who were also in the same space of grief and just looking for ways to share and normalize pregnancy loss. And that was pretty much my first taste of sharing my work in this online space. And I had different publications reach out to me asking me if I would share my story in, magazines and things like, and of course, this is going back to 2014, 2015 when magazines were around. So I wrote for a few different fertility magazines, some local, some overseas. And that was kind of my first taste of what I guess coaching looked like. And and I guess the rest is history, really. So I then explored this space a little bit more. I felt God just taking me, one step at a time. I came across this beautiful coach online. She's based in America, and she was an instructor at a life coaching academy. And so I reached out to her and just having conversations around grief and, how she can support me, etc. And so I actually worked with her as a, coachee, and she was my coach. And at the end of our time, she said to me, Monica, you have a gift of supporting other women. Would you consider learning more around this space of coaching? And I mean, I was a medical practitioner. I was already sort of 10 years into my job. I loved my job. I loved, my patients. And so I was like, yeah, okay, let's see where this goes. And I enrolled in an online course and did that for 6 months. And fortunately, we had a successful pregnancy and had my second child in 2016. 2017, she was born. So yeah, and that was the start of something. God's just used, I guess, that time of pain and grief to reveal to me what my gifting is as well. And that was a journey I had to walk myself, because I was so, when you train as a medical practitioner, you go through years and years of training, you're in the job, and you pretty much go, okay, this is it. This is going to be my life for the next however many years till I retire. And so to suddenly be, I guess, for a different career option to be put in front of you, I was really surprised, to be honest. And in fact, I would say I was in denial for many years. It wasn't a journey I shared openly. I was still saying to everyone that I am a medical practitioner. I never, mentioned the coaching side of things, not till probably 2018, 2019. And then, that sort of, I guess, that confidence grew in me that this is something I can do and I have the gift for. And and then I started to skill myself in different areas. So that's pretty much my journey of, I guess, career change. It didn't happen overnight. It took years and years. And I eventually felt God saying to me last year that I need to, I guess, take my foot off one side, and that being the medical space. And that's how I walked away from my medical career last year. Yeah. So that was my, I guess, my not so straightforward journey of change.
That's a really big deal.
Yes.
That's a really big deal. There's so many things going through my head. I'm trying to envision what it would be like to be such in a high position in a role like a doctor. And then, and I'm not saying that there's different levels really of what you're doing versus what you were doing versus a coach, because they both bring something so unique and so powerful and so different to lives. But socially, in our status world, you're going from a doctor to a coach. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, and I have to say that I think that was one of the things that was one of my biggest challenge as I was moving through this space of transition, because, I got a lot of pushback. I didn't really know what this would become, to be honest. I didn't know this world of coaching was something I could really be doing for years to come. I only just saw it as a side hustle, they that term that gets used a bit, but I didn't actually see it as a career change. But I guess through the years, God has a funny way, right, of getting our attention. And every time I would struggle with this whole, I don't know, God, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if this is going to be a space where I can really serve the people who need me. Because, when you're running your own business, it's not just the coaching side of it or showing up for your clients. There's a lot more to running a business. And I am not someone that, I guess, likes to put myself out there and go, look at me, work with me, that sort of thing. The marketing side of it was not something I enjoyed doing. And, as a medical practitioner, after years and years of training, working in the public hospital system, I was then working in a private clinic for about 5 years. And I would literally just show up to work. I would have my patients all booked. I would do what I had to do. And I go home and I show up again the next day. So I didn't have to sell myself. I didn't have to, I didn't have to do all of that. The staff at the clinic that I worked with would do all of that. So again, it's so much to learn, but also there was a lot of identity, I would say, crisis that I had to navigate. Because like you said, in a society where there is a lot of almost like a unspoken hierarchy.
Yeah.
I had to navigate that. And as much as we want others to validate that for us, I had to learn how to accept that for myself. I had to go through this whole process of understanding who I am, who God says I am, why the work I do matters, and why walking away from medicine isn't, a bad thing. And I think, God, in all of his grace, was very gentle in leading me to come to a place where I could see what he was trying to do with my gifts and my talents. And that's something I've learned how to do. And I still, I have days where I go, oh God, this is too hard. I just want to go back to medicine and, just do the thing I was trained for and show up to work, do the thing and, earn a good income, a stable income, I should say, and just go home, So, but every time I come to that point in my thinking, God presents me with something, something that I'm like, yeah, that has to be God. That has to be God hearing me, listening to my stress or my, So yes, the identity side of it was definitely challenged. Hence why it took me so many years to finally share with people that I was a coach and, openly. Because it was all a bit of people who knew me would know, but otherwise it wasn't something I would just share openly. Or I was a bit hesitant, like, I'll be like, yeah, I'm still doing a bit of medical, but I'm also doing a bit of coaching. There was a little bit of, hesitation with whom I share. But yeah, I'm in a better place now, I should say. God's, it's all been God. God's helped me understand who I am through his lens and not through the lens of the world.
Yeah. He's so big on our identity and who he says we are, and not putting that into the hands of the world and taking on their version of what they think is acceptable for us to be. He's so big on that. Identity is something that God keeps bringing up to me, because it is so important for us to know who he is, because then it reveals to us who we are, because in these times we need to be unshakable and unwavering in who God is and in who he says we are. So thank you for sharing that story. It's so amazing. And I love, I admire your obedience in starting your blog, not knowing where God was going to take that. Like, I love how he just starts with these little things and he prepares and equips us along the way for what he can see in the future.
Yeah.
He's just such a good God.
Amen. Yeah.
And you have this beautiful gift of supporting women through something that is one of the hardest things that women can experience, is losing a baby. So thank you. Thank you for embracing that, and thank you for your obedience in moving forward with that and bringing that to the world, because there's so many women out there who need that. And may I just encourage you, when you're marketing yourself, that's what that whole marketing piece is about, is you are letting women know, hey, I've been where you are and I can help walk you through that.
Yeah.
That's what the whole marketing thing is, because there's
women
out there crying, going, God, I need someone and I don't know where to go. And then you pop up on their Instagram or their Facebook. And he's like, she is where you go. She's going to walk you through.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's one of the things that it's, as hard as it was going through that journey, I almost feel like that's a space that you can only relate to the pain that you've experienced for yourself, or the frustrations you've been through yourself. So I've had like moms at school come up to me and, not knowing my story, they just start to share about, that time of their life, or as they are going through. And I almost felt for a while that I was like, oh my gosh, God, this is like almost like a, some would say intuition, but it's almost like I feel the Holy Spirit nudge me towards women who are going through that time of change, or going through that grief. And I've initially, it used to scare me, but now I just embrace it. And I just go, okay, God, if that's, it will start as a conversation in that space, but then it kind of leads into something else. And again, we can only really relate to the pain that we experience, or the frustration that we go through. And apart from, losing the 5 pregnancies, I've experienced a bit more than, that in the last few years. And I think that's where God calls me to start equipping other women as well. Yeah. So God never wastes any of our experience. That's what I've come to realize.
So true. That is such a great point. That is such a great point. And I'm pretty sure there's a Bible verse around that, but I just can't think of one.
Yeah, there will be.
So I have had the pleasure and the honour of meeting you through our beautiful Aussie general and prophet, Roma Waterman, through Heart Song Academy. And I think you might have posted your book on the thread. And I was like, hi, Monica, come and be on my show and talk about your book.
Yeah.
Cultivate Your Change, because change and transition is something that is so hard to go through. Can you talk to us about your book? Because I started reading it, and unfortunately, as I mentioned prior to recording, I didn't get to read much. As much as I wanted. I couldn't put the book down, but I had to, because I ran out of time.
Yeah.
So I got to chapter 1, created for God's glory, and I kept rereading certain things. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Tell us about your book.
So, thanks for highlighting the book, Angela. And so, like, this book, Cultivate Your Change, And the tagline is practical ways to nurture your faith and flourish during life's transition. So this book really, it's an interesting journey how this book came to be. So I started writing this book in 2020, end of 2020, just as the world was going through change, right? So I wrote this book in that time. And I think it was about 28,000 words or something like that. And, there was no title to the book. It was just, I titled it Solo Book. That was as creative as I got. and it was saved on my laptop. And as I was starting to go, all right, I really need to, talk about change and what's going on. And I guess for me, it was really a sharing of the change that I've gone through. So my career change, my motherhood journey, and the way I view pregnancy losses or just being pregnant in itself, because my first pregnancy was easy. I felt pregnant, didn't even know I was pregnant till my 12-week appointment. And, it was easy and simple. So for me, my first experience of pregnancy loss was a shift in the way I had to view pregnancy and the grief that goes with it. And I think, some of these things, they are changes in a woman's life, but it's not spoken about. And then obviously I was married, and then my career changed. We moved from Melbourne to Gold Coast for a year. Again, that was change. And then we came back, and I had to look for a job. I was a medical practitioner, and I was ready to go private. And again, it was that whole getting into a job that would suit my family lifestyle. See, again, this change is I guess it's such a big word, but we experience it pretty much every day. We can. And change is constant. I think I can't remember the exact saying, but the two things that's constant in life is change and death. Like you can't avoid it, or two things you can't avoid. I think a lot of what I wrote in my first version of this book was around my experience of change, but it sat in my laptop for 2 years. I just didn't feel it was the right time. And I guess I was just waiting on God to give me the green light to put the book out. And interestingly, in 2020, I think it was around this time, November, December, I had a client that I was coaching, and she lives in the UK. And so I was on a coaching call with this client at 11 o'clock at night. With time difference and whatnot. And so I finished my coaching call with her, and I was helping her navigate a career change. And so I finished the call. I was just praying about this whole thing and praying for this client of mine. And God drops this word, cultivate. He just drops this word into my spirit. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm ready to call it a day. And this word cultivate, it was clear, he just gave me the word cultivate. And I was like, this has come out of nowhere. But again, my experience with God is God will do this. He will drop something in my spirit, and I would then sit with it, or I would question him. And that's kind of been just the way God gets my attention. And so I just sat there, and I was waiting on God and praying. And I was like, God, what does this word mean? Is this me, or is this you, or is this my brain, or is this you? Give me more. And literally, Angela, in the space of 15 minutes, I was frantically writing out everything that God was downloading. And the word cultivate in itself stands for, so every alphabet in the word cultivate stands for something. And so I didn't know what was going on, but I literally just took pen to paper, and I just wrote everything down. And that's me. I love pen to paper. I love journals, and hence why I designed the planners and journals. So that's my second sort of arm to my business. But I love pen and paper. And so here I was, writing everything down, and then went to bed. Next morning I get up and again this word cultivate comes to me, cultivate. And again, so I go through this whole, 3 pages that I've written down. And then I go, there is a framework here. God is giving me a framework. This framework is called cultivate. And so, I sat with it for, I think it was about maybe 6 months. And then what I really felt was God was, every time I would coach a client, he would put the word cultivate in me. He'll remind me of the word cultivate. And I saw, okay, I went, so I started to test out this framework. And that's how, then in 2021, I won't say rewrote the whole book, but I had to almost, take out chunks and replace it and bring this whole model into the book. But again, out of fear, I kept it in my laptop. And then and so it sat there for about 2 years. I didn't do nothing with it. Early this year, 2023, it was end of January this year where I felt God reminding me. So I completely forgot about this whole manuscript that I had. God. And in the last 2 years, I wrote another book around helping women find fulfillment and meaning in their life. So I was, I think, more focused on that manuscript, and I'd forgotten about this one. But this January, God reminded me of this book, and it felt like he was saying, it's time. It's time. And so, I know how to write, but I don't know what else comes after. So, I had to learn a little bit more in this publishing space and what needed to be done, get myself an editor, etc., etc. So, long story short, that was a process I walked through this year. And around May, I think the fear of putting a book out just consumed me. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can put this book out. But God was, quite clear. And I really felt God saying, it's time. It's time you put this book out. And so, yeah, I went through that process and released the book end of October. And in the book, I think in the first couple of pages, you will see the cultivate model and what it all stands for. So the cultivate cycle. Mm-hmm. And you can see every alphabet in the word cultivate stands for something. So C being curiosity, clarity, U being unpack, and so on and so forth. So I basically have been using this framework with probably 90% of my clients that I coach. And interestingly, in July this year, I was invited to keynote speak at a business event through a media organization here in Melbourne. And this book was already in editing phase, wow. Right? And I took this model and I presented it, not knowing what to expect. But my goodness, the feedback that came from my presentation, everyone literally, I need to have more of that Cultivate framework. I need to know more about the Cultivate framework. And I was like, okay, this is confirmation that this book needs to get out in the world. And that is, I didn't have a name for the book. Just at that point, I still didn't have a name for the book. And my editor was like, we need to put a name. We need to put a name. We need to put, a subheading before it goes to design phase, obviously. But, and I literally just said, God, I need a name for this book. And he just gave me the word cultivate and change. And so me and my editor was like, okay, if these two words have to be in the title, that doesn't leave much else, So we just go, oh, cultivate your change. Yeah. And that sounds right. And so that's and that was pretty much how this book was birthed, Angela. And I mean, it highlights a lot of the change that I walked through, but also as it says, practical ways to nurture your faith and flourish during life's transition. And I think a lot of us women, we walk through change, but we don't give enough weight to it, because a lot of us actually do a lot of my clients, they start businesses, they have a family, they have young kids, they go back to work, or they're growing a business or starting a second business. And a lot of them don't actually see that as something big they've done. They just go, yeah, that's, but it's only when I stop them and go, hang on, you've done so much. Wow. Do you even know how much you've done? Do you know how much you've accomplished? A lot of us women, we just go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing because, I don't know, it's just, I guess, the way we do it.
We have to keep functioning through life, through everything that we go through the children, through work, through moving house. We have to keep going. And so we just go, oh, well, but you're right. Everything is a big deal.
Yeah. And I think we only realize it when we, I guess when things are not going well and we have to pause, or we have to stop doing what we're doing, or we get burnt out. And so I share in this book again a little bit of my story of getting to that point of burnout. And I had my second child was a baby. I was working as a medical practitioner. I was blogging at that point. I was beginning to put my coaching business together 6 years ago. And I got to a point where I went through a season of burnout. And I had to take a couple of, I think I took 6 weeks out of my medical work to really just go, all right, I just need to be still for a little bit. And again, that was such a change, as a medical practitioner. When you go through burnout, it's a very strange thing, because you're usually the one you're the one that's treating people, but then now you're the patient. And I remember still like going through all these weird and wonderful investigations, because I had all these interesting symptoms in my body, but it was all burnout. I was having heartburn and tummy aches and whatnot. And, I went through all sorts of investigations, and lying on the bed as a patient is a very different feeling, when you're on this side of the bed. And so I had to learn, I guess, a lot of practical things I can do from, every day to just keep, keep my faith, but also to not go back there. Burnout isn't fun. It can really, it can be such a hard season, not just for you, but for your family, for your loved ones. So not a space that, I would want anyone to experience. And so in the book, I share a lot of practical tools, and, but I think one of my favorite parts of the book is that I walk the reader, the woman who's reading the book, through that framework. And so in chapter 11, I present the framework, and there's like a workbook space within the chapter where I get you to reflect on your journey of change. And I get my clients to do this. So, I get them to just grab a pen and paper and walk through these CULTIVATE, and you can pretty much use it through any change you're experiencing, small or big, career change, or just a shift in your motherhood season. So I think that's one of my favorite parts of this book, because it is so practical. And once you experience the framework, and not being biased, this is a framework I use on myself, but I've seen my clients go from, I'm feeling lost, I'm feeling stuck, I'm feeling frustrated, to, I can see now why I'm going through this. I can see some gold in here, and I think it's such a light bulb moment when we get to see that. Yeah.
I think when we are going through change, sometimes change or end or transition, we don't understand the phases that we are going through. And so something like this helps us go, that makes sense. That's why I'm feeling this way. And this is how I can deal with that. And then you go to the next stage. It's like, okay, so I am normal. What I'm feeling is normal. Yeah. And now you've explained it and I understand. And there, once again, are the steps to help me through that. And it is so powerful to have an instruction guide or a framework on how to just adjust, help yourself adjust to these moments of our life, because change comes all the time, as you said, sometimes every day.
Yeah.
More than once in a day.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, I think one of the things that we tend to do when we're going through change is we want to go from A to B, and we want it to be quick. We want it to be as easy as possible with least resistance. But I think one of the most powerful, I would say two powerful alphabets in this word cultivate is the C and the U, because the first alphabet C is curiosity and clarity. And I think when we sit with curiosity to the change we're experiencing with God, we get to peel back the layers and go, God, why am I feeling this way? God, what are you trying to say to me? God, who are the people that I need to connect with? So you're approaching it from an openness rather than I need to fix this. So, curiosity in itself is so powerful. But when we do it with God, we're basically inviting God into this space of change. And that's something I had to do for myself because, going through grief, changing careers, navigating my identity shift, I had to get really curious. Why am I so fixated with being a doctor? What has shaped my view and the need for validation? So I come from a family of doctors. So I had to be really curious as to why I have maybe put certain jobs up on a higher pedestal than what it needs to be. Yeah. I also come from a family of non-believers. So I'm the only believer in my family. So again, I had to approach that change from a space of, why God? Like, isn't this Christian walk meant to be easier than this? But it's that curiosity. And then God will, start to share what, and reveal. And that's where the clarity comes. But that second alphabet is where I see a lot of my clients get their breakthroughs, or at least get to experience the start of something. It's that second alphabet U, because that U stands for unpack, unlearn. So sometimes because we're curious and we start to see God talk, share with us, we get to go, okay, I need to now unpack what my beliefs are. I need to unpack what my values are. I need to unpack some of my childhood stories. I need to unlearn some of the negative narratives that's running in my head. I need to unpack my unbelief, right? Because again, we all can have head knowledge of our faith, but until it becomes heart knowledge or heart, you feel it, you're not going to be able to, in the times of stress and change, you're going to go, oh God, I don't know. I don't really believe this is for me. And that's something, again, I experienced. But once I started to unpack that and unlearn some of my, I guess, childhood expectations that were placed on me as a child, as a young adult, etc. It was only then I could start to experience my breakthrough, but also start to see God work in that space. Yeah. Because, if you don't take that lens off, you don't actually see the good in it. It's sort of like that unveiling. You have to go, all right, God, I'm ready to see what you have for me. Mm-hmm. I want to approach this change in a more of an open heart. Like, show me what you have for me, rather than, I don't think that's for me. I'm not going there. No, God, bring something else. Yeah. And I think all of us, in our humanness, it's hard to sometimes keep walking, and I'm going to be very real. I mean, some of the things that God has called me to, I'm like, God, no, not for me. I think you got the wrong person. I think you got the wrong, try the girl next door, But, God knocks, right? Initially just like gently, and then sometimes it's go. Yeah. And then, okay, it's time to Yeah, time to move. So I talk a bit about obedience, what that looks like. When change is, not to say forced onto us, but, sort of we see no other option, how we can still flourish in that place by leaning into God and, sort of really coming back to some simple practices. And for me, I think one of the practices that has really made a change for me is journaling with God. That is something that I have been doing for years. And the days that I don't do that, I feel like fish out of water. It feels like I can't go on with my day. I need to kind of just go, all right, God, what's going through my heart? And then, of course, I pour all my junk out, and somehow, I will come back to God giving me a scripture or a word or something to comfort, that time of pain or challenge. Yeah, so
that's so good. So really what you're saying is this book is for the brave and for the courageous who are ready. So I want to hit this change head on, and I'm going to confront whatever's in me, and let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to call you out on some of your stuff, and I think many of us really need to be called out on some of our stuff because it sets us free.
Yeah, and I think that's essentially what we want to be, right? We want to and change, and I share, like, it's never easy. Like, some change we anticipate and we are looking forward to, but a lot of change, it's not something we signed up for. We want to just, sort of sail through our life or our careers, etc. And we just want to, have the good. But as I've shared, even through my story, Angela, like, sometimes I go, really, God, do I really need to go through more? Like, I think this is enough. So, and a part of my story was I was diagnosed with an autoimmune illness 10 years ago. So I live with type 1 diabetes, and it's a relentless chronic illness, as many chronic illnesses are, and it is invisible. So you won't know if someone's living with type 1 diabetes. But again, through this process, God's given me so many different opportunities to speak life into others living with this illness. And yes, I have my days where I am just, done with it, and I'm curled up and not really wanting to face the world. But, God again reminds me that I don't always have to be out there in the world. Some days it's just between me and God. And I think that's the beauty of having a relationship with God. Some days you can just go, you know what, God, I'm done. I'm exhausted with this. Yeah. And I'm very honest with God. And that's the kind of relationship I have with God. And, I would just go, why did you give me this? Why? I need an answer. Tell me why. Right. And I won't get the answer straight up, but, in the recent few months, God's brought, around me women who are looking for community, who live with this, moms who are looking after children who live with this chronic illness. And, recently I've hosted a brunch for World Diabetes Day. And, again, because it's such an invisible chronic illness, people don't talk about it enough, even though so many people live with it. And I think, the fact that I know what it's like to live with it, again, I become that vessel that can go, there is hope. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. And of course, I get to share a big part of what keeps me going, even, in battling this chronic illness, is my faith, is the fact that I know at the end of the day, God has me. And he is watching over my health, right? And what could come out of this story, only God knows. But, the fact that I even shared with some of the women that came to the brunch, I said, I know sometimes it's hard to believe that we can be healed, but I serve a God whom I believe can, in an instant, take this disease away. Amen. And whilst, I think sometimes it's hard to believe, but the moment those words left my mouth, I was like, oh my gosh, where's that from? Where did that come from? That has to be God, because, sometimes you feel like you don't have the right words to say. But again, because I think I've over the last so many years, I've matured in my faith as well, and continue to learn more and more of who God is and how he communicates with me. I sometimes go to different things that I host and lead, whatnot, and I go, okay, God, I don't know what I'm doing here, but you know what I'm doing here. So you give me the right words, right? And sometimes I surprise myself. I'm like, okay, that wasn't something I planned to say, but obviously God did. God had his, So I think, every woman I work with, whether it's in a coaching capacity, whether I'm just having a conversation with school moms, church community, etc., I find that women somehow we downplay how much we do and how much we have achieved. We don't speak enough about our journeys, but when we do, it actually gives permission to the other person to go, you know what? There's hope. God's done that in my life too. And stories, I think stories are so powerful because they just highlight the hardship, but also highlights the hope and the change. And sometimes it takes years and years, right? And that's where I think for me, even the Cultivate cycle that I present in this book, I use it pretty much every day. Wow. Even when I'm, getting upset with my kids, I go, all right. Let me just go through this. And because I've obviously, used this so much, like it just runs through my brain. I'm like, okay, let me get curious. Why am I upset? Am I angry? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Okay, Lord, what do I need to unpack here? Okay, maybe and so I just go through this model quickly, right? And then the very last alphabet in that is E, which is enjoy.
That was my favorite.
Right? And then, as I walk through this and just using the example when I'm, getting angry with my kids, I'm like, okay, E, enjoy. Okay, I need to enjoy this season. Yeah. As hard as it is, I need to enjoy this season. These kids are a blessing, right? And these are the kids I've prayed for. And I endured a lot of pain to receive, right? And yes, motherhood is hard. Motherhood at 4:00 in the evening is hard, but let me find something here. Let me, and so this model can literally be used in any setting. And, sometimes you might not use every single alphabet, but there will be one alphabet in there where you can quickly pull out. And that's why I share, even with my clients, I'm like, this is a tool. It's not a end all be all. It's not going to fix your problem. Yeah. Right. But it's a structure for you to walk out with God and go, all right, God, how can I enjoy my kids? Even if you pull out one of the elements, how can I enjoy this time with them? How can I enjoy this evening with, this group of friends, etc. So I think there's something in it for everyone. And I enjoy using the model, and I see, my clients enjoy it. And so I think, I hope the readers will enjoy working through that framework as well.
I'm sure they will. And one thing that really stood out to me was the word flourish. Because we don't want to just make it through life, right? And the word flourish, I looked it up, and it says to grow luxuriantly, to thrive, to achieve success, prosper, and a flourishing business. So there's, you can apply that to your life how you like, but we don't have to just make it through by the skin of our teeth. We can actually have a life that thrives and is luxuriant in many areas. And I'm not talking necessarily financially, although that's always wonderful as well, or helpful as well. But like within your children, within your health, within your business, within your community and your family and your girlfriends and your husband, most importantly, your husband or your wife, whoever's listening. You know, look for, that's what we're allowed to and encouraged to achieve in this life. And yes, life is challenging. The Bible tells us that it won't be easy, but he gives us a way, and your book is so aligned with the Father's word. I mean, he gave it to you. He gave that to you for us. He gave that to all of us. And it's such a blessing.
Yeah.
So sometimes what I do on here is, we've only got a couple of minutes left. We'll have to make this quick. But sometimes what I do is have an empowering quote, and then to ask you how it responds to you. But I've actually found one from your book.
Okay.
This is in chapter 7. Quit all this. Relying on God has to start all over every day as if nothing has yet been done, by C.S. Lewis. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think what it means to me is, you know, I think sometimes we come with our preconceived ideas of what we want our day to look like, our lives to look like, etc. But and interestingly, when I think I titled that that chapter "Quit All This," and I think sometimes we want to do all this, but to do all this, we have to quit all this. I know it's a bit of a cliche there, but you know, if you want to have a good day ahead, then you need to quit filling your day, firstly, with things that maybe don't matter. You might need to start to quit thinking negatively, or to have that vicious cycle of negative thinking. You again, it's I think you have to be very intentional. And I think that's how I see this, or interpret the quote. And I think a lot of it, again, we, you know, like even to do something good, we have to make room for it, you know, and to grow something, you need to make space. To birth something, you need to create room. So even rewriting this book, I had to almost sort of clear 2 months of my calendar and go, all right, this 2 months, I'm going to dedicate it to writing and getting the process going, etc. So you do have to quit something to birth something. Or you fit everything in and then you do things half-heartedly, or, you know, you get burnt out and all of that. So I think, I love that quote, and hence why I put it in there. But I remember even trying to come up with a name for the chapter. I was like, let's just quit all this. Quit the way we think negatively, you know, clutter our days, etc. It's pretty self-explanatory too. Some things we do need to be very intentional and go, you know what, I quit this. I quit constantly saying yes to everything. That's something I have to teach a lot of my clients to do. You have to quit saying yes to everything. You know, so
because your no is as important as your yes.
Yeah.
And no is a full sentence as well, and it's okay to use it.
Yes, that's right. I think we all have to be reminded of that some days, that it's okay to just say no with a full stop and not have to justify, and, you know.
High five, sister. Beautiful, Dr. Monica. We will have to wrap it up here. I could talk to you all day long. We have a 50-minute segment. So I'm like, fun. I want to thank you and honor you once again for your book, Cultivate Change. Your website quickly for people to jump on and.
Yeah, it's drmonicadr.com, and the book is available on Amazon, any Amazon. So it comes in paperback, hardback, and the Kindle version. So
amazing. Get yourself a copy of this book. I was blessed to receive a copy. Thank you so much, Monica.
Pleasure.
And I just cannot put it down.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and I honor this space and this time together. It's been really wonderful to get to know you.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And if you know anyone who needs to hear this story of change and how to cultivate your change, share this podcast with your friends and with your family, and let's make change so much easier in our lives.
Yes.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow Angela on Facebook and LinkedIn at Angela Bennett, on Instagram at AngieB_transformations, or visit angieb.com.au. And remember, your past does not define you, it refines you.